So when we talk about emerging powers, we're mostly talking about the BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Specifically talking about countries like Russia and China. At what point is an emerging power no longer emerging? When can you drop that qualifier?
Well, many people would like to say that you have to have continued economic success to be emerging. And after all, the whole BRIC idea grew out of a view that these were really emerging markets that were doing very, very well and were going to become ever more important to the way in which the world economy functions. And so when they start to do less well, when they start to have more political problems, when they start to have more social problems, many people will turn around and say, well, they're not really emerging powers, they're not really emerging. We should really forget that idea. My view is rather different, is that certainly economic success, being a social model, undoubtedly is an important part of becoming a more important country. But in dealing with the BRICS, we're dealing with countries who, by their size and their importance to a whole range of issues, from climate change to the global economy, are so important and will continue to be important, even if they have periods, maybe even decades, of being less successful than they have been in the period we've just been living through.
And what is unique about Brazil as an emerging power?
Well, I think the most important claim that Brazil is unique as an emerging power is the claim that the president has made, that Brazil could be the first country that emerges as a major power in the international system, that does so not on the back of hard military coercive power, or not necessarily on the back of economic resources which can be used in a very direct coercive way, but rather on the back of what many people refer to as its soft power or its diplomatic GNP, that it has a capacity to make a difference in international relations, particularly in many international institutions, and that gives it something distinctive and something special in terms of how emerging powers have emerged through history. And undoubtedly those resources and those values have been very important, but undoubtedly too, as the international system enters a harder and more perhaps conflictual period, the extent to which that distinctiveness is able to play out in terms of success is going to come under increasing challenge.
What effect do you think that institution building on behalf of the BRICS, such as the Parliament and the Development Bank, will have on the current global order?
Well, I think the issue there is very much the current global order, because if we think in terms of exactly where we are now, then it's quite easy to turn around and say not only are the BRICS quite often divided amongst themselves, but many of their initiatives are either rhetorical, to do with statements, claims made at summits, or even in terms of institution building, and something like the BRICS Bank represent a small and still rather marginal addition to the institutional architecture of global politics. The other view, the one I share, is that actually these changes, both in terms of the institutionalization of the BRICS summits, in terms of the extent to which the BRICS does represent a caucus for the emergence of a discussion about how global order ought to be, and the extent to which the BRICS Bank represents an innovation in institution building, which, given the current context and given the way in which it might go, and of course we don't know whether it actually will, nevertheless these things and these changes really do represent something that is quite important for the way in which international and global politics is developing.